Well, to the UK now, and the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has taken a leaf out of our own Foreign Minister Penny Wong's book, calling for a de-escalation of the Israel-Iran conflict.
The principle is that we need to de-escalate this. There's a real risk of escalation here that will impact the region, possibly beyond the region, into Gaza. And obviously it's already having an impact on the economy. So I've been absolutely clear, we need to de-escalate this. Yes, the nuclear issue has to be dealt with, but it's better dealt with by way of negotiations than by way of conflict.
Joining me now is Sky News contributor and GB News host Emily Carver. Emily, great to see you. What's the reaction been over there to this conflict?
Well, I mean, that clip you just showed of Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, is so typical of him. He is always sitting on the fence. He may use a lot of words, but manages to say very little. It's just the usual predictable calls for de-escalation, which is all fantastic. Wouldn't we love to live in a peaceful world? But actually, Keir Starmer, what are you going to do? What steps are you going to take? What are you going to say to Donald Trump to try and end this conflict? Calling for diplomacy over military action? Again, if that was the route out of this, it would already have been done 20 years ago, wouldn't it? I'm not quite sure whether these types of platitudes serve much of a purpose when the reality is it's pretty clear that Israel believes that their battle with Iran is a matter of life and death, existential for their country. Diplomacy, negotiation, conversation have done nothing so far to prevent the Iranian regime from sponsoring terrorism around the world, including in this country, threatening the very existence of Israel and continuing with its nuclear program. So I rather doubt our government is going to be the arbiter here, don't you? But of course, in Britain, wider reaction, lots of support for the Israeli people. But again, of course, you've got useful idiots out on the streets in London appearing to support the Iranian regime for God knows what reason.
It all sounds way too familiar to what's happening here in our own country, and our own leaders saying these platitudes about urging restraint and diplomacy, as if any of that will work with a terrorist regime. Do you think the UK would play a role if the US does decide to strike? And Trump has said he'll make a decision on that within the next 2 weeks.
Again, I think Keir Starmer will try to play both sides. I think eventually he would follow Donald Trump, because that is what we tend to do, but he'll try to appeal to both sides of this debate as usual, while trying to remain on the fence in one way or another. But it may well be that we actually, as a country, Keir Starmer has to give the green light to a potential US strike, because they may well be using the Diego Garcia military base in the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean, which we partially own. These are the islands that our Labour government has decided to give up to Mauritius, of course, for some bizarre reason. But for now, it is widely assumed that the B-2 stealth bombers that the United States would use if they were going to strike Iranian nuclear facilities would use that airbase. So Keir Starmer could actually be the one to give the green light, but we remain to see.
Well, we spoke last week, you and I, about this devastating Air India crash and the sole survivor, this amazing story, Vishwas Kumar Ramesh. He's now been discharged from hospital and he's attended the funeral of his brother, who was also on the flight. What can you tell us?
Yeah, I mean, it's so terribly sad. He's spoken about how he feels guilty for not giving up his seat, astonishing the sole survivor from this hideous, hideous nightmare. But we're hearing more about who else was on this flight. There were a lot of Indian British families, a lot of Indians who were working in Britain, who had children here in Britain. 2 entire families from London believed to have died. They travelled to India for Eid celebrations. You had an engineer, his wife, 2 children, one a doctor, one studying computer science in London, all sadly died. Others working in hotels at Burberry and Harrods, another man who was flying back to London after scattering his wife's ashes in the Narmada River. They had 2 young children who are now mourning the deaths of both their father and their mother in the space of pretty much a week. It's just so terribly sad. You had a gay couple as well who just filmed themselves just hours before they took the flight back to London. They'd been on a wellness retreat. It's just so staggeringly sad. isn't it, really? That's all we can say and hope that this type of thing does not happen again.
It's really tragic, and you can't imagine the survivor's guilt that will follow this poor man for life, but incredible that he still managed to survive. Just quickly, Emily, we don't have much time, but there's a fresh battle to stop foreign-based courts from meddling in immigration and deportation rulings. What's that about?
I mean, people have been calling for these changes for years and years and years. I mean, the number of cases of foreign criminals, paedophiles, drug dealers, abusers being allowed to remain in Britain despite being foreign nationals because of the European Court of Human Rights, which allows lawyers to argue that they have a right to a family life in this country, which allows lawyers to use loopholes to try and keep these people in this country. You have an Albanian drug dealer, he's allowed to stay in Britain, another foreign drug dealer allowed to stay in Britain because he promised that he'd only smoke cannabis rather than sell it. A Zimbabwean paedophile allowed to stay in the UK because he might face hostility back at home. Well, I don't know about you, but I think he probably should face some hostility wherever he is in the world. But this is all about the European Court of Human Rights. And it seems like Labour are finally clocking on to this as an issue. Whether they'll be able to make any changes is another matter.
Again, it sounds all too familiar with our own High Court here dealing with deportations. Emily Carver, thank you so much for your time bringing us all the news from over there.